Thanks so much for having me. And as David mentioned, we have a bunch of folks, both in fractional roles as well as full-time chief of staff roles that are using Reclaim today. And Caitlin, who introduced us to the chief of staff network, was sort of like banging on my door for a few months, actually, just saying like, "Hey, I'd really love to get you in front of more people who kind of need this thing in their lives." And David just posted a link to our website there. I'll basically be kind of walking through just a couple slides today to really kind of give you a sense of kind of the problems we're solving and what we're really kind of focused on. And hopefully a lot of it should resonate for folks who, I'm sure everyone in this room has struggled with their calendar at some point and maybe even is struggling with it this week. And then I'll kind of dive into some practical ways using Reclaim, but also just like generally on your calendar that you can implement some of these things to make your calendar suck less. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. As the title of this presentation suggests, this is all about understanding really why our calendars suck. I think there's no shortage of information about like using your calendar in a better way or trying to get more productivity out of your calendar. But I think sometimes we don't kind of stop and ask the question of like, why is this actually so hard? And I think that's a big part of what I'll be talking about today. And then I'm going to give some really practical examples of things you can do and start doing using Reclaim, but again, also just in general on your own calendar to help with this problem that kind of leverage a lot of the intelligence and AI that's now available to all of us as busy professionals. Just a quick background on me. I used to be a product manager. That's where I spent most of my career. Product manager calendars are some of the worst in the world, I think, but they're followed closely by many other roles inside of organizations. And my co-founder and I started Reclaim back in 2019 after kind of observing a lot of the problems that we experienced on our own calendars, but also like the impact that it had on our teams and the impact that it had on our companies to really not make calendars a central focus or like a central discipline in the company. And so we really went on this mission to try to help everyone to be more intentional about where they spend their time and to make the calendar smarter about kind of basically working for us instead of us working for it. This is probably a familiar and uncontroversial statement. I think we all kind of feel the pain of our calendars. Like, in a perfect world, calendars are supposed to be a reflection of all the things we're supposed to get done, right? Like they're supposed to reflect our priorities. And for better or worse, for most people, they're going to actually be where we end up spending like most of our working hours. But for most professionals, like they're spending, this is based on surveying like thousands and thousands of people across our user base and looking at our own data. Most people are spending on average about 10% of their week just managing their schedule. And that means like negotiating events, trying to work through meeting scheduling, trying to literally just like time box and time block out their week. They're spending a ton of time in meetings. They're getting interrupted all the time. And in our data, when we ask people about like, what are the things that are burning you out or what are the things that are kind of like making you stressed out at work, everyone like beyond even pay or promotion or company culture or all the things that we sort of think about as being like critical to a company, the vast majority of professionals said, the number one cause of burnout for me is lack of focus time. Like if I don't have time during the week or I feel like I'm being pulled in too many different directions, that is the thing more than anything that's going to burn me out. So again, I think calendars are really supposed to be helping us with where we manage our time. It's really the only tool that we have that directs our energy, and yet it's not really doing that today. And there's no shortage of like gospel around this. Like I'm sure everyone here has like seen some version of, you got to like time box like Elon Musk, or you got to get yourself like a maker schedule and you got to, become indistractable. And yes, there's definitely like something to be said about discipline and process here. But the reality, I think, that's really uncomfortable, besides the fact that I think most of these people actually have executive assistants, is the tools really just don't match the problem. And they don't match the problem in a few different ways, right? Our calendars don't have enough information about us, and they're not smart enough to make the kinds of decisions that we have to make. And so the first kind of practical example of that is automation. And by that, what I really mean is like, if you've ever gone to your calendar on Sunday night and gone and like lovingly blocked out and curated your perfect schedule for the week, you probably found that maybe by Sunday night in a couple hours or by Monday morning, it's already out of sync with reality. You've got people like pinging you saying like, hey, I see that your calendar's really busy. Can I steal some time here? And so our calendars don't adjust as our week adjusts. They don't adjust and respond to changes in real time. That's all kind of left to us as the managers of our calendars to do that work. Similarly, we don't have any concept of flexibility in the calendar. What I mean by that is when you block out your entire calendar or you time block your calendar for certain types of things, or even if your calendar is really full with meetings or just, events that you're not necessarily in control of, there's no concept in a calendar of I'm available here, even though my calendar doesn't say I'm available, or I'm not really available here because this thing's really important. And that's the kind of thing that we spend a lot of time as humans trying to kind of express, either through email or Slack or other types of mechanisms. We're really trying to help people understand, hey, my calendar doesn't really tell the full story. The real story is this thing can move, this thing, I can't move, this thing I can move. Like that's a thing we all kind of go through pretty frequently. And then these last couple points around prioritization and extensibility, they're really interconnected. Our calendars just don't know what matter to us. And anytime we're making changes to our calendars, we are making trade-offs with ourselves and we're making trade-offs with other people around our priorities and our team's priorities. And because our calendars don't know what those priorities are, even though they live in like all these systems where we're capturing them, right? We're capturing them in our to-do lists, we're capturing them in email, we're capturing them in all these systems of record. But the calendar's not aware of them. And even if it were aware of them, it can't automate and make itself flexible around them. And so these are really the core problems that we perceive. And this really all boils down to intelligence, right? The calendar is just super dumb. It's been the same standard for 30 years. It's been the same tool that we've used to manage our time in organizations forever. And the complexity of our lives has just, progressed, exponentially. But the tool that we have to manage, like arguably one of our most valuable resources, maybe our most valuable resource, has just not gotten any smarter. And so this is really the journey that we've been on with Reclaim for about 5 years now, is really thinking about how can we make the calendar more flexible, more automated, more aware of your priorities, and more extensible, more kind of integrated with the systems where you already do your work. And I'll show you a few examples today in Reclaim for really these 6 kind of categories. Like this is probably pretty reflective of the kind of stuff that you're going to see on your schedule, your routines, the things you want to do regularly. I'll talk specifically about lunch because it's usually if anyone's got any routine on their calendar, it usually starts with lunch. We'll talk a little bit about tasks and how to make time for to-dos in a way that's a little bit more flexible before they're actually due. We'll talk about meeting scheduling and how to use Reclaim to sort of get a bit smarter about how you schedule your meetings. And then as a couple of bonuses, we'll talk about how to juggle multiple calendars. I'm not sure if folks here are in scenarios where they're like embedded with different clients or consulting with different people. And maybe you run into that super fun scenario where client A is trying to book a meeting with you and they're not aware of client B's calendar and they end up overbooking you and you're in this awkward situation. We've got a really nice feature that helps with that. But then also things like just taking breaks, like making sure you have time to travel and making sure you have time to take breaks, as I do after this meeting. For example, I've got a nice little 15-minute buffer that Reclaim put down for me. And I'll show you kind of these different examples of how you can apply this on your calendar using Reclaim. And then also kind of highlight how we're implementing those kind of 4 big concepts that I mentioned earlier. And then we'll take some questions. So let me do the old screen share dance here. See how fast I can do this. All right, not so bad. So I'll probably start here. So this is Reclaim. Again, you can sign up for Reclaim if you have a Google Calendar today. We are in the process of supporting Outlook. Outlook is coming probably in the next couple months here. And actually really in the next few weeks, we're going to be opening it up into private beta. So apologies if you're on Outlook. We have, I'd say, limited support for it today. But probably the first thing I want to highlight before we go into any of these really practical scenarios is just like what you're seeing here and what's really different about the way we're kind of organizing your world here. The calendar, if you look at it through this view, it's a series of times and dates. It's basically like, here's all the stuff, get on the treadmill, go to all your meetings, do all this shit. Sorry, excuse me. Apologies for the language. Uh, but what we're doing is really trying to look at the world through the lens of priorities. It's like, hey, what are the things that are most important to you across your meetings and your focus work? And we're not taking the perspective that focused work is better than meetings. I'm sure we've all had bad meetings. I'm sure we've also had good meetings that actually helped us to get our job done and helped our teams. And I think there's a lot of unhelpful gospel around like, all you have to do is maximize your focus time. Some weeks this might be all about getting heads down work, and some weeks it might be all about meeting with people. We don't really care. What we care about is let's make time for your priorities. And so what's really unique about this view is when I make changes, for example, if I say, hey, sprint planning is actually a little higher priority this week, it's actually changing. This is adjusting how Reclaim actually schedules my calendar. So we're really bringing priorities like into the heart of how the calendar operates, which is a really, really big difference from how you're using it probably today. And I mentioned routines as kind of the first practical example. This is, I think, one of the if you do nothing else with Reclaim, I would highly encourage you to at least do this for yourself. And we're going to start by talking about lunch. This is a feature we call habits. This is basically our version of recurring events, except they're way, way, way smarter. And I'll dive a little deep on kind of how to set this up here. And you can do this for any routine. You could think of like, metric review or customer support or any type of thing you're trying to get done regularly for yourself. But I'm going to focus on lunch since that's pretty universal. So there's a few things to kind of note here. The first is, this is the title of my event. This is what it's going to show on my calendar. You can see here, I'm designating a priority. I'm deciding like, how important is this thing in general? How much is my week going to fall apart if I don't get time for this thing relative to other priorities that I have on my calendar? And then here, and this is really kind of the heart of how our system is making these kinds of intelligent trade-offs, you're giving us a set of rules. So rather than just saying, I want to eat lunch from 12 to 1 every day, and it's marked as busy all the time, which means I can never take a meeting there. And God forbid if a meeting does land there, I have no other time that day to get lunch. Instead, you're telling Reclaim, hey, I'd like to get at least 15 minutes and no more than an hour, sometime between 11:30 and 2 p.m., Monday through Friday, ideally at noon. If you can get it as close to noon as possible, that's great. And I won't go into some of the other options here. There's a whole bunch of other little ways you can tweak this, but this is really kind of the heart of how you set up a routine. And you're going to see this as a theme in everything that we're kind of putting together, are these kind of flexible rules and hours for your time. And so when I go into my planner here, and this is basically our view of the calendar, one thing to note is you can use Reclaim directly through your calendar. We have this nifty little Google add-on here that's kind of context sensitive. So you can, click on Reclaim stuff and we give you special actions that are kind of specific to our product. But this is kind of a better view of it because it'll show you sort of like how we're doing this job. There's a few things you'll notice. I'll go to next week so you can really get a feel for it. So the first is you probably noticed that some of these events have these little dotted outlines and some of them are filled in. And what that means is that Reclaim has put the time down, but it's marked it as free. And that means that if I use this little helpful view here that tells me what my colleagues see, I actually am way more available than meets the eye. And this is really critical because the downside of blocking out time, as we mentioned earlier, is like if you fill up your entire calendar and you make yourself harder to meet with, you're kind of making everyone's life and actually your own a little bit more difficult. And so what Reclaim is doing here is it's kind of saying it's running like millions and millions and millions of simulations against your calendar and trying to figure out how flexible is this time? How at risk is this habit or this event from getting overbooked or running out of time? And if we see that there's a lot of flexibility as we do for your calendar, you can kind of see I've got a lot of like leeway on lunch this week, except on Friday where I'm actually pretty booked up from 12 to 2 and I've only got this like 30-minute slot. We're going to put the time down, but we're going to mark it as free. And so that's kind of powerful because it means that you get to make time for the things you need without totally cramming up your availability. So that's just one thing that I think is really powerful about how we're doing this job. Again, obviously, we're also threading this throughout the week, right? Some days it's at 12 to 1, some days it's at 11:30 to 12:30. On Wednesday, we detected that you already have lunch, so you don't need it scheduled again. And then you can see we've got it kind of threaded here. We adapt in real time to changes on the calendar, and we're pretty sensitive to RSVP. So if I were to say, hey, actually, I'm going to go to this quick sync, and I'd like to actually, mark this time as busy now, you're going to see in a few seconds, lunch is actually going to shrink down and it's going to get me that little 15-minute slot to eat lunch. So it's basically Reclaim saying like, okay, cool. You're, this is it now. Like I'm going to mark this thing as busy. There's no other times you could possibly eat lunch. And of course I can set how flexible this window is. Here I've set it to 15 minutes because, maybe I eat really quickly, but you could set it to 30 minutes or whatever you think your minimum really is. You can also always take back control. If you're like, hey, Reclaim, today, I don't care really what you think. I want to eat lunch at, 5 p.m. today. That's going to be my lunchtime. You can move it and Reclaim will actually lock that in place. And that's our way of saying, okay, cool. Like Henry's taking back control. He's going off autopilot. He knows best what he needs. So we're really trying to give you this blend of automation and control. And I'm going pretty deep on this with lunch as a specific example, but you'll see this as a theme as we walk through other parts of the product. But I think routines are a really powerful way to just start getting those bookends and kind of foundations of your week for like, here are the things I need to get done regularly, but giving your calendar the flexibility and the prioritization to make the kinds of trade-offs that we all inevitably need to make when we're working through our schedules. So a pretty natural extension of this is tasks, right? Or our tasks. Routines are all about things I want to get done regularly. Tasks are all about like, I need to get some time for this thing before it's due. With Reclaim, what we're really doing in very similar fashion to habits is you're kind of describing, again, sort of like a flexible policy. Like, hey, I need to maybe, write up some board slides. I'm sure no one here has ever done this. And I need maybe 4 hours to get it done. And it's really good for those kinds of tasks that you're like, this isn't like a 30-minute thing. This is something I'm going to need to really get onto my calendar, because if I don't, I'm going to end up doing it at night, or I'm going to end up doing it on the weekends. And then what you're telling Reclaim is when you want to get it done. And this kind of takes you into hours where you can kind of set, I won't go too deep on this, but different sort of ranges of time where you want to get stuff done. We have these defaults here that are pretty handy, but then you can set custom ranges. If you're like, hey, I have certain types of tasks that I like to do early in the morning or late at night, that kind of thing. In this case, I'm just going to use my working hours. And I can say when this thing is due. So maybe it's due on April 20th or actually April 19th. And I don't want to actually get started on it until, let's say, Monday the 15th. So I need 4 hours. I want to split it up into 1 to 2 hour chunks. And I'm just going to go ahead and create this. And you can see I've got this priority here, which I'll kind of get to in a second here. So if I go check out my tasks, you can see it's now scheduled on Monday at 10:15. And let's go see how Reclaim kind of broke it up. So you can see here, write up some board slides. I've actually got all the time I need on Monday. But again, because I've actually got some leeway before that due date, Reclaim's not just blocking out my whole calendar that day. That time is available for anyone to book, right? So again, you've got this nice flexibility where you don't have to keep your whole calendar busy. You can kind of just describe what you need, and Reclaim's kind of got your back, and it's saying, hey, I'll keep an eye on the due date. I'll keep an eye on your priorities. I'll keep an eye on your availability, and I'll decide when you really need to flip this thing to busy and become unavailable for meetings. I can always flip these things to busy manually if I was like, actually, I love where that time is. I'm going to lock it in. I'm going to lock this guy in. That means that time's now marked as busy and it's not going to move again. If I want it to go back to, auto scheduling, I can unlock it and just say cool, we're good to go. So tasks are really useful for those things that you want to get done before they're due. And we automatically will kind of log work against your tasks as time goes on. If you ended up doing work outside or off hours or something like that, you can always say hey, I spent 2 hours on this thing. And that's going to not only log it on the task, it's going to change your schedule, because we're aware now that you've actually spent those 2 hours. They're now in the past. So now we only need 2 hours for the task, and we're going to schedule that time in the future. So tasks are kind of all based on when are they due, when are they prioritized, and you can create them directly from within Reclaim. But we also have, and this is to that point about extensibility, tons of integrations. You can create tasks from Google Tasks. You can create tasks from Slack, from Raycast, from Todoist, Linear, Jira, Asana, ClickUp. You can sync tasks in from all of those platforms We'll pull in like project names. We'll pull in the priority of those tasks automatically based on what their priority is in the sort of source platform. And we'll sync the status of that task bidirectionally. So if you've got your tasks captured in different project management systems, this is a great way to kind of align your calendar to it without you having to like go recreate that whole list inside of Reclaim, because we really want to kind of lean into the systems where you already have captured that information. So that's really all about heads down work for you. But the next thing I really want to talk about is meeting scheduling, because that is where, for a lot of people, so much of the pain is. It's one thing to coordinate our own schedules and time block out our own schedules, but anytime we're trying to coordinate times with other people, that can be very, very painful. So there's a couple features that we have that really help with this problem. The first is focused on recurring meetings. You can kind of think of them as habits, but for many people. And one feature I'll show you is this one called Smart One-on-Ones. Just as a side note, Smart Meetings is coming very soon. This is actually something we're running a beta on. If anyone on this call is interested in trying it out, it's basically a big upgrade to Smart One-on-Ones, including the ability to schedule smart multi-person meetings. So your team stand-up of 6 people or your demo meeting of 10 people, Reclaim can be in the business of coordinating those meetings and scheduling them more flexibly. But Smart One-on-Ones is what's generally available today. And Smart One-on-Ones are, as you might imagine, they're meetings for 2 people who want to meet on a regular basis, but want to have a little bit more flexibility and want to make sure that they stay connected even when their calendars change, right? So if one person goes on vacation or another person, has to decline that day, you don't have to go through all the rigmarole of like slacking each other and finding a new time and being stressed out about it. Reclaim just does that work for you. And it does it across both people's time zones, both people's availability, and both people's preferences. So if Kathy has different preferences than I do, they can express that. And they can express like, hey, I don't like taking meetings on Wednesdays, for example. And similarly, these things also have a priority, right? I can decide, and this can change from week to week, like how important it is to have these meetings. There's some other little smart things that we're doing behind the scenes here. Like if we see that you've missed this one-on-one pretty frequently, we're going to try to schedule it more aggressively. So there's a lot of smarts behind the scenes here, but this is really what you're kind of expressing as a set of rules. And just to give you a practical example, I'll show you this one-on-one that I have with Ellen and Lonnie. I've actually got a couple here. In fact, I'm going to go to next week just so I can show how this all works. So I've got this one-on-one with Ellen and this one with Lonnie. These are both smart one-on-ones. And I'm going to go ahead and say I'm actually going to be out of the office and I'm going to be out all the way through Thursday. So I'm blocking out my calendar, right? I haven't sent anything to Ellen or Lonnie. I've just said I'm out of the office on Wednesday and Thursday, which has now gone through and declined all of my existing meetings. What you're going to notice in a few seconds here is that my one-on-ones with Ellen and Lonnie are going to reschedule. They're actually probably going to reschedule to Tuesday because they're going to look for mutually available time. And if it can find it, it's going to try to get it on the next best kind of day for both of our schedules. And you can see, literally, Google was actually really fast on that one. Sometimes their UI is a little slower than our service. You can see it literally rescheduled like instantly, right? And the same thing is true if like that person were to block out their calendar, I were to decline the event, or if they were to decline the event, it does the exact same thing. So you can kind of think of this as like it's keeping people connected without them having to worry about all the pain of scheduling. So this is a really, really powerful way, especially if you're in the business of like having lots of one-on-ones. We have people in our customer base who are managing 40 or 50 one-on-one meetings across direct reports, skip levels, cross-functional. And the way they've really described it is like building that internal network and maintaining that internal network, which in really even somewhat large organizations is really imperative, especially in a remote world. It's a really powerful way for them to make sure that the meetings that they need to have are getting scheduled, and the ones that are more kind of, hey, we won't lose our minds if we don't have this meeting this week, those can kind of be deprioritized as needed to make room for urgent needs. So that's really our solution for thinking about kind of recurring meetings. And you can kind of see, again, those themes of like flexibility, automation, sort of prioritization. We're really trying to bring those into the fore. there's this other kind of world, which is all about external meetings, right? Meeting with customers, meeting with partners or consultants or other people that you're working with that may not have access to your calendar inside of Google. Now, this is one of those things where a lot of the time people talk about scheduling link etiquette. There's been this whole discussion around like, should you send a link to someone and is that rude? And a lot of people focus on like the words that people use, and certainly that's a thing. But there's one thing that I think is ruder than any other action with a scheduling link, which is to send someone a link for a quote unquote urgent meeting, and then they open the link and there's no times available. And we didn't intend to be rude by doing that. We just probably didn't check our calendar because, like, why would you? Like, that's kind of like you shouldn't have to do that. These tools are here to help us. So this is where priorities really become powerful, is we allow you to not only set all the kind of like different options that you'd have on, your scheduling links. I'm sure you've used, products like this, so I won't belabor, locations and custom questions and redirects and all kinds of other stuff like that. But the really interesting thing here is priority, right? A higher priority link, a critical link, is going to show more availability to my potential attendees than a low priority link. And that's because Reclaim is aware of my priorities. It knows that, hey, these one-on-ones are high priority. They're not critical. Only this one with Ellen is critical. So this high priority meeting, it's not only going to show all my actually available time as available, including all those free events that I showed you for like habits and tasks. It's also going to show times that may conflict with lower priority events. And of course, those things will automatically reschedule if they get booked over. So this is a thing that like sales teams use. If you're trying to meet with investors, we use it internally anytime we're trying to kind of get on the call with customers. It's a great way to express kind of more availability in cases where you really don't want to have to go back through your calendar and like X out a bunch of stuff, but you still want to kind of use a link or share times to express that availability. Just in case, you're the kind of person who does care about the other forms of etiquette, like the words you use and whether you paste in times, we have some great solutions for that as well. You can personalize any link. So you can do things like add their email, add their name. You're kind of like taking an existing link and making this little one-off version that's just for that meeting. And then, of course, you can also, pick times that you want to share with people. And you can do this from Gmail. We have a really nice extension that will kind of pull that together, but you can show those ranges. You can include links if you want. You can make them into buttons, and you can kind of paste that message in however you'd like. So if you really want to like keep people away from your booking link or just share times, you can do that too. And they'll use all that same priority information. This is really powerful. Last couple things that I'll show you, really more on the theme of things you can do for your calendar that are just generally helpful and will probably make your life easier. They're sort of just little jobs that we're doing all the time that AI and software can help us with. The first, I kind of previewed this, is this feature we call Calendar Sync. This was the first feature we ever built for Reclaim. And it's what kind of launched our company, was this thing that basically takes events from one calendar and blocks them on another calendar. This is a super challenging. It's one of those like simple but incredibly annoying problems. And if you have even a personal calendar, you're probably familiar with it. If you've ever like had a doctor's appointment on your personal calendar and you forgot to put it on your work calendar and your colleague booked over it, and now you're like, oh crap, do I go to the doctor's appointment or do I go to the sales call? And you're making that sort of choice. That's really what this feature is designed to help with. We also have consultants and all sorts of folks who use this to schedule time across dozens of calendars. They've got like all these different sync policies going in all these different directions. But really the core of it is we're taking events from one calendar, we're blocking them on another calendar, and then we're giving you these really nice privacy options. So you can be as sort of opaque as busy if you just want people to see that you're busy from that other event. And this is true busy, by the way. This isn't like take the event and mark it private. This is a public event where we have overwrote the title with busy. So literally like even IT admins can't see what the original source details of that event is if you really want to create that firewall. You can be a little more, this is our favorite, is like a little context, but not too much. Personal commitment, I don't need you to know what it is, but I need you to know that it's personal. You can also, if you set it to a different type, you can have work commitment or travel commitment. We update those privacies based on the calendar type. If you're a big open calendar person, you can be like, yeah, I'm going to show everyone all the details, and we'll tell you based on your privacy settings, like what other people are going to be able to see. So what this looks like in practice is, I'll go to a fresh week here. Here's an event that came from my personal calendar, and using my handy add-on here, I can see that I have a date night with Kate at example.com, my wife, Kate at Example. Um, and I've got a date night at Jacqueline, great restaurant here in Portland. And if I wanted to see the original event, it's just sitting there on my original calendar. So this is the original event that came from my personal calendar. This is what my colleagues see. You probably also notice there are these little travel blocks here. Oh my gosh, what's that? Those travel blocks are there because this event has a, location on it. So Reclaim can automatically detect locations on events and add a little bit of time for you to kind of travel from point A to point B before and after the event. If it's a flight, if we detect that it's a flight, we'll add a lot more travel time to make sure you have time to go through security and, catch a cab afterwards and all that. And similarly, you probably see these little orange guys here. These are little breaks that Reclaim is scheduling after meetings. And you can configure all these things here. If you've got, buffer settings, you can set your travel time, as I mentioned, as well as all of this kind of break information. You can do it just for video conference meetings if you're doing a lot of Zoom calls and you just want to get breaks after that, or you can do it after all the meetings that happen on your calendar. So hopefully that gives you a pretty good sense of what you can do with Reclaim, and hopefully you also learned a thing or two about just calendars in general. Some of the stuff that we're doing in terms of like free and busy events, when we talk to some folks, most people don't use free events ever on their calendars, or if they do, they're not aware of them. But hopefully you can kind of get a sense of how this gives you a little bit more flexibility and a little bit more prioritization out of your week, and just hopefully a lot more intelligence out of your calendar, yourself and your team. I would say that we are kind of on this journey. It looks like maybe we didn't cache my stats here, so I'm just going to show it for myself. So we're kind of giving you here kind of the basics. I'd say we're really giving you a sense of like which habits you're spending time on, how much time you're spending on your tasks. This is probably the most interesting one, is thinking about like just where is your time going based on different categories that we detect automatically. So like how much time are you spending in meetings? And then we send you a weekly report for all of this information as well. That's pretty popular. Some nice little things like what are your most productive days? What are your least productive days? What's your work-life balance looking like? Who are you meeting with? And what are your heaviest meeting days, lightest meeting days? I think this is something that in the next couple months, we're going to be evolving even further to allow you to do things like filter by priorities and filter by projects and kind of see where your time is going in terms of like specific initiatives that you're trying to drive. And then on the team front, we very purposefully did not start with like the ability to drill into individual team members for obvious reasons. We want to do a little bit of thinking on that problem before we just put that out to employers. But we give you a little bit of information around like how your meeting load is distributed across your team. And in the future, we're going to have a little bit more control for like actually drilling down into specific teams from here.
Hey, Henry, nice to meet you. I will preface this by saying to everyone that I have never met Henry before, seen him, and he is not paying me, because I'm about to say how much I love Reclaim, and I've been using it for years.
Oh, thank you.
I used to
Appreciate it.
be a fractional CFO, and I worked with multiple clients at once, and it was like calendar management was probably the biggest nightmare, right? Across multiple time zones, it was like, and then personal life with 2 kids. It was a disaster. Reclaim saved me. It was great. And then I went on a whole lobbying where I would tell everyone that they should use that. And so I've definitely gained some followers. I definitely, going through this, I'm now thinking I need to bring you or someone from your organization in to do a pitch to a larger group of managers in my organization. But I do have one request. And it's just recently come up where for some recurring meetings, just like you were talking about travel time, it would be really nice to have like 30 minutes of prep time in
Hmm.
advance, like, for specific meetings. And if there were a way to set that up and reclaim, that's my Christmas wish for 2024.
Well, you'll be, first of all, thank you. And your check is in the mail. But the release of smart meetings and habits, which I'll get your email after this, and I could probably look you up as well in our user DB, and I'll reach out to you. Our smart meetings and habits 2.0 beta that's running right now introduces a feature called dependencies. And it basically
Ooh,
lets you say, like, hey, before this smart meeting, I want to do this habit, or before this
yeah.
habit, I want to do this other habit, or I never want these two habits to happen on the same day. Um, so that's coming really soon. And then additionally, it introduces travel time for habits and smart meetings as well, which we didn't have previously. There's a ton, like a almost an
Nice.
alarming amount of good stuff in there. So I can get you added to that if you're interested, and you can give it a
I've
try.
already made the request to be in the beta group. So yes, just
Okay,
book
very
me
cool.
if you
I
know
will.
anybody.
I know someone. I know someone who's got the power. It's as easy as flipping a switch.
Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Uh, Other questions?
Uh, Aaliyah says, does it work with calendars you're subscribed to?
Yes. Yeah, in terms of syncing them, absolutely. So basically, you connect Reclaim through a Google account and soon an Outlook account. And any calendars that you're subscribed to, any of what Google would call a sub calendar or a shared calendar, you can use as a sync source. So you can like sync events from that calendar, and you can also sync events to that calendar. We will only schedule on your primary calendar, which is kind of by design because most people, that's like where where all the action is. It's where everyone's trying to get your time. It's what your colleagues see. But you can definitely use it for calendar sync, and you can also set it as like a connected calendar. So you can say like, hey, look at this set of calendars when you're blocking time for me, and make sure that I don't get overbooked.
Cool. And then Bash said, what's the ETA on Outlook? Axel says, does it work well in France? Um,
Uh, so I'd say on the Outlook front, we just added our first, like literally yesterday, we added our first 5 uh, calendar sync only users to Outlook. So we're currently supporting read only Outlook sync, meaning you can sync events from an Outlook calendar to a Google Calendar using our calendar sync feature. Outlook, I think, is going to be coming out in full form, like, i.e., you can use it as a first class calendar in Reclaim this quarter. So probably the next couple months. Does it work well in France? We have a bunch of French users, so I think it does. We don't do any localization today, which is a little bit blood on us. I think we would like to do that at least for scheduling links. We also have a lot of users in Germany, and yeah, but we do have quite a few folks in France. In fact, I sometimes get support tickets in French, so I have to go to Google Translate to answer some of those. But yes, it does work in France.
hey, it's got a question. Do you have any sample use cases to walk through a busy professional who's also parenting?
Yeah, I mean, I am not a parent, but I know my co-founder is a parent of 3, and so I get to look at his calendar all the time. And I can tell you, like, there's 2 things that I really think about with this kind of scenario that I've seen. One is definitely calendar sync. If you have a family calendar, which maybe you do, maybe you don't, or if you have a personal calendar where those types of like sport meetings or sports meets, I don't call them sport meetings, sport meets or other types of personal events are taking place, making sure that those get synced to your work calendar, that in and of itself will make a huge difference because it at least makes sure that your personal life is reflected on your work calendar automatically without sacrificing privacy. And then the other one that Patrick really spends time on is his personal habits. Like he's got habits for like eating dinner with the family and making sure that he's got time to go pick up, his youngest son from swim practice. And those things can be somewhat more flexible because they don't have to happen at exactly the same time every day. But he uses those to kind of keep his schedule on track from a personal standpoint. Um, the closest I have is a dog, and the only personal ones I have there is picking and dropping off our dog at daycare, which is a lot cheaper than child daycare, or so I'm told by Patrick. But hopefully that's helpful. And definitely like, if you go to our help docs and stuff like that, we've got in our getting started guide some good information about just like work-life balance and how to set up Reclaim for work-life balance in general. Any other questions? I know we're at time.
Yeah, so there's two more in the chat. Cindy says, can we be alerted when the rollout for Outlook is ready? And is the app SOC 2 compliant?
Yes, it is SOC 2 Type 2 compliant. I will drop a couple of little links in here for folks. The first is our waitlist for Office 365. If you want to be the first to know, this is a great way to do it. And then the other thing I will drop in is our security page, which not only outlines our certifications and GDPR and all that good stuff, it also kind of talks through in detail kind of how we do security and privacy at Reclaim. So yeah, if you want to be alerted when Outlook's available, that's the best way to do it, is to get on the wait list there.
Cool. And then I guess while you're finding those links, I guess the other question I have is around like, I forget where you said, how long has the company been going for? Like, what's the company size? Yeah.
Yeah, we've been around since June 2019, I think was when we quit our jobs. When we quit our jobs in April, and then we started it in June. And the company's still pretty small. We're about 20 people, but we've got a big audience of people using the product today. There's about 38,000 companies that use it today, and about 250,000 users across kind of different disciplines and roles. But we're small crew. You'll probably end up talking to me at some point in customer support if you reach out.
Love that.
Yeah.
And then do you have a chief of staff? Not have a chief of staff?
Not yet. I guess I've sort of been serving in that role at the company. My co-founder's a Java developer in his previous life and did a lot of our initial backend engineering. And so I've really kind of taken on the mantle of operations, support, sales, marketing, all the other fun stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, no chief of staff yet, but I'm sure that day is approaching. We'll definitely get there.
Cool. What? Any other questions from people here? Audrey, also congrats on your new role. Any other final questions for Henry? Well, we still got him. I don't know what his calendar looks like for the rest of the day. So
I've got, like I said, I have a 15-minute buffer after this meeting. I'm chilling right now. I'm good.
The meta jokes of this I'm just having so much fun. Thanks everybody for being part of this. This is
always the best part of building calendar software is all the calendar jokes that you get to make.
Give me your best calendar joke.
Oh man, I don't know. Oh gosh, I'm sorry, you're putting me on the spot. They're mostly jokes about buffer time. It's almost always jokes about travel time. Yes, it's not the right time for it. Yes, at this event right now, I am feeling a little blocked. Yes, I'm not free. I'm not free to make a joke right now. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate you taking the time, and thanks for all the awesome questions. And to the audience members that I planted here to talk about how much they love Reclaim, thank you so much for showing up and doing it. No, seriously, really appreciate it. And this was awesome.
Thanks, Henry. Thanks everybody for being here.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Yeah,
thanks,
bye-bye.
David. Take care. Bye.